I wasn't entirely 100% sure that it is actually of interest to anyone outside of the book club, but then I thought, if I were a viewer and I saw someone wrapping up a whole year's worth of book club, I would click on it because I'm nosy. How are you? I hope you're good. Every year for like 6 years running, me and my Patreons have a monthly book club. I did a little Spotify-inspired wrap-up situation last year. This year around, I actually dished out a very comprehensive feedback form for those who have participated in said book club. A lot of people actually have filled that in, which I am forever grateful because. So I'm welcoming you to the Mooney Book Club Wrapped 2025. We have, of course, read the 12 books for each month of the year, as you do. We have read over 5,000 pages. Funnily enough, even though it felt like we were reading much larger books this time, we only read 57 pages more in comparison to 2024. But then I think we actually have tackled the entire Green Bone saga. I think it was in 2024. A very brief overview of what we have read, going in the chronological order. We started with Blood Over Bright Haven, then went into The Spear Cuts Through Water, followed with a cozy book, A Teller of Small Fortunes, went into the most anticipated Sunrise on the Reaping, into some cozy romance for Paladin's Grace, then a bit of a rogue one for us, The Naturals. Moved on to Uprooted, Night and the Moth, obligatory Holly Jackson for Not Quite Dead Yet, to add a little bit of a thriller vibe in there as well for the spooky month's upcoming Immortal Consequences, then The Raven Scholar, and then lastly The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. Out of these we had 3 that leaned somewhat thrillery mystery, 9 were fantasies in one way or another. Clear lean, but there is some variation, I feel, which is nice. Now, out of the books that we read, I wouldn't say that any of them were necessarily very much under the radar. No one has ever heard of that. But the least known one was 19,000 Goodreads rating. So that one was quote unquote least known. And the most known, unsurprisingly, was Sunrise on the Reaping, because obviously it is a very popular franchise, so this is not gonna shock anyone. With the shortest and the longest book actually being back-to-back, surprisingly, and at the end of the year, with the shortest coming just under 300 pages, and The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year, which was nice, because again, before that, we have read The Raven Scholar, which is about 650 pages. We clearly enjoy that, because it came as the 3rd most beloved and most highly rated book of the book club that year, with an average score of 4.32 stars. And number 2 with a 4.51 was Sunrise on the Reaping. It really went down extremely well in our book club. I feel like everyone was just really happy to be back in the world. It seems to have had a much better reception compared to the previous prequel. And the number 1 for the rating itself is 4.59 with the very first book of the book club. So technically everything was downhill from January 2025. I'm just joking, actually. We had a great time, I think. Blood Over Bright Haven. So these were our top 3, and I think it is kind of reflected throughout the ratings, not just the stars and feedback overall. Obviously, we have so many different opinions, so there's not always going to be a complete unanimous vote on everyone enjoyed this, everyone loved it. But even though the number 1 read was Blood Over Bright Haven, actually the Everything Award actually goes to the number 2 favorite, Sunrise on the Reaping, and genuinely it just had almost everything in the extreme side. So it was the fastest read with the highest rating of the fact that it will stick with them and they will actually continuously will think about it from time to time. It's the most anticipated read as well, which is again not too surprising. No DNFs was surprising because again, that rarely happened. We didn't have a lot of DNFs overall, but we rarely have no one DNFing. And again, the form was lengthy, and also I'm sure not everyone has gotten to it. So there may have been some DNFs that were just not people replying to the form, but I only can go by what I know from the form. So as far as I know, everyone who has decided to read the book have not DNF'd it. Which leads nicely to the last point, that this was the most highly participated in book club month. So overall, more people have decided to join in that month in comparison. So the fact that more people participated and then still we had no DNFs, I feel like a very successful read for us. Going in the opposite direction for the most dips, which translates to most DNFs from the people who have actually wanted to try it and read it was uprooted. And you know what? I am actually part of the problem because I did DNF this myself. Like, I think maybe like 60%. I was genuinely like on my way. It was not an early DNF for me as well. Learning the retellings is just a very hard time for me, and the writing style for this one in particular as well. A lot of things, but I was clearly not alone. And even then, the highest rate for the DNF was 13.8% of the people who answered. Absolutely the highest compared to the other ones. Still not tragic when you think about the fact that everyone is different. And I also actively encourage DNFs because I do think that, you know, there's just no point. If you're not vibing with the book, like, what's the point? We all have finite amount of time that we're on here, so just makes no sense. Outside of The Sunrise on the Reaping, another one that competed for this type of award was Not Quite Dead Yet, which is of course a thriller, so it makes sense. It does live on intrigue, and so the results reflected that. But I guess in comparison to the other thrillery books, this one stood out to the book club. It scored the best in the high intrigue, and as well as also people voting for it being something that makes them feel curious throughout it. And a lot of people also said that they have flew through this one too. Now, the most turbulent month I want to say was February, when we read The Spear Cuts Through Water. This one is very tricky because I have seen it being recommended everywhere and alongside the books that I normally really enjoy, so I was really looking forward to it. But I think deep down, I was also scared of the writing style because I've heard that it is not the most easy one. And I think that is what it was. Rated as the most difficult to read. I did have like a graph of ease of reading, and this one just looked so completely and utterly different from the rest of them. Even when there was a mixture of answers, this one just swayed to the left of not being easy. A lot of people have decided to skip. Tied actually with The Naturals as well. It had a lowest average, and people also reported really struggling with the pacing. I do think this is a very unique read, and I think every unique read is going to be polarizing. For some people, they have read it and this is their absolute new favorite and a piece of art, and unfortunately though, equally on the other side, we had a lot of people who just could not get with it. On the other side, the one that was the easiest to read was voted the most wonderful crime of the year, which makes absolute sense. It's an urban book to begin with, so it's a contemporary. We don't have to learn any other world, and it's written in a very easy prose, so 1 + 1, right? Now, Teller of Small Fortunes was actually a book that people did enjoy thoroughly. However, it is voted for one that just completely already left their brain. It's just not something they think about. It's not here for the longevity in your mind. But I will say, overall, this wasn't a bad book to read. It's just not one that is sticking with people, which is fine. It was beat by Spear Cuts Through Water, but I do think the reasoning for that is completely different. So I thought it would be worth a mention. And a read that has elicited a lot of feelings for us was Paladin's Grace. This also makes sense because it was voted the most swoon-worthy, the most humorous, the most cozy and relaxed read as well, despite the fact that there was another cozy fantasy, and this one actually did score higher. I feel like this one gave the most kind of like positive, easygoing emotions this year. Because we had a lot of different emotions, but I feel like this one is the one that is the most kind of fluffy, let's say. Now, I love this question because for me it really is a big tell if a person reads the book and then feels like it was good enough for them to recommend to a close friend. So I'm listing all of the books that gotten over 70% of a yes, I would recommend this to a friend, and we have half of them. Very lovely to see. The highest one for that actually came as The Raven Scholar, with a whopping 92% of people who read it saying that they would recommend it. And I have to agree, it's my favorite book of the year of 2025 in general, outside of the book club, just overall. Personally, I was also very interested in seeing how many books of the book club people would class as something that they would have had on their TBR regardless and probably would have read even without the book club, and how many would be classed as more of like a wild card for them, reading outside of their usual genres or outside of the usual TBR. It was a fun overall split, around 60% matching with their reading taste, already existing TBR, and 40% being more of like discovery reads. But I will say some of the books were literally like 90+% of yes, this was already on my TBR, and then some of them were all the way to the 70% of no, this wasn't on my TBR. Genuinely, I'm just happy that there are some that would be still close to what we want to read, but not something that you would have read that year. I feel like that's a sweet spot to have some of these while still having some of your most anticipated to read together and discuss, because it's fun. The average rating for everything was actually still above 4 stars, which to me reads very successful for the year. Obviously, this is all luck, as much as we can try and pick the books that we think we're gonna love. We also pick stuff for fun. We also pick things to be the wild cards, and I wouldn't take it any other way, and I don't necessarily feel like I have a goal with the book club that the rating would be high. Fantastic if that happens, but also some of my favorite discussions were of the books that we all did not love. Because it's fun to vent together as well, as much as it is fun to gush together too. So it's not a personal goal of mine. I think we have fun regardless, and I feel like we're also very good at just disagreeing politely as well. It's a fun discussion in overall. I have the slide for what we kind of felt in the percentages, just for those who are curious as well. I'm happy to see that the very neutral one was at the very bottom. That is a goal for me, because I want us to feel something even if it's negative, you know? Apathy is the killer of joy. So I wasn't here necessarily to learn something very unexpected of us. I think it's just fun to see which book stood out and for what reason collectively. But the conclusion is kind of similar, you know, the more emotional damage a book inflicted on us, the more we remember it. The mid-level complexity reading-wise is mostly translated into higher ratings, so anything too easy can be good if we're looking for an easy read, but sometimes can just be a little bit like lackluster, and obviously too complex and you lose us, which I do think that's to an extent what happened with the February book for some of us. Faster book is not actually always better, which is interesting because that was also a pacing question. And overall, as a collective, at least this year, we have seemed to have preferred memorable over comfortable, because a lot of the books that were memorable to us have inflicted painful emotions. Again, it's not very surprising. I feel like, you know, for it to be memorable, normally there's gonna be some sort of impact, and the neutrality doesn't give that to you. So again, it makes sense. I don't know if this is of interest to anyone. I thought I will share it with you in case it is of interest. What are your reading preferences? If you are participating in book clubs, or if you're looking to participate in book clubs, would you prefer it around that kind of split of 60% of what you would have read either way to discuss with others, and like around 40% of things that are adjacent to your TBR but not necessarily on it? Or would you look for something that's like completely out of your usual, and you just are there to discover things? What is your preference? Do you have preferences on pacing? Do you have preferences on genres? Let me know, because I'd be very interested to hear. Okay, with that said, I am gonna skedoodle, but thank you so much for watching, and I will speak to you in the comments. Bye.